Hello, it's Mike. In this video, I'm going to show you how I created my smart dashboard in Home Assistant. This dashboard pulls relevant information from my Vaillant smart combination boiler. The reason I created this dashboard is because the myVaillant app that controls my smart combination boiler does not show relevant information on the front screen. So here is the myVaillant app, and this is the front screen when you open it up. And on it, you can see very basic information. In fact, there's a lot of wasted space in this app. I've covered in detail this app in a previous video, and I'm going to put a link in the description. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I'll just show you a few things that bug me with this application. So as I say, you can see outdoor humidity and the current temperature and a status, and that's about it. And then in a sub menu, there is the water pressure and the flow temperature. Now these two fields are absolutely key to this app because this smart combination boiler makes use of curves or heat curves. And again, if you don't know what a heat curve is, I've done a video on this and I'll put it into the description. But likewise, if I want to go and see the curve, for example, I have to click through multiple menus to get to the point where I'm just seeing the relevant information. And that's just pure frustration. With Home Assistant, I can see all the relevant information in one place without any scrolling, and then I can really start to dig into the information. I can create charts and I can do comparisons between the current flow and the desired temperature and the indoor temperature and the outdoor temperature, and I've got detail and data from a week ago, a day ago. It's really up to me how I see this information. I can't see this information in this app. And look, even if I want to go back to the home screen, I can't click a little home icon. I have to click through arrows to get back. So this app is useless. It really is. So anyway, this dashboard, I'm going to show you a step-by-step guide on how I created it. I'm going to make one or two assumptions, one of them being I'm assuming you've already got Home Assistant installed. I will add a link into the description where you can go to the Home Assistant page and it'll explain in great detail how you can set up Home Assistant on various devices. But so that's the one assumption. The second assumption is that you've got HACS installed as a plugin on your Home Assistant. HACS is Home Assistant Community Store. And in here, you have all the different integrations that can be installed in Home Assistant. And an integration is just like a link or access to an API. So if I use Vaillant, for example, Vaillant have an API behind the scenes that you can access, and the easiest way you can access it is by going into this HACS and typing in a few letters of the Vaillant name. So I'll just put in Vail, and yeah, you can see a couple of integrations that can be installed, and these integrations link directly to the API at Vaillant. So the one that I'm installing is myVaillant, but your boiler might have its own integration and you'll just select it. The process though is exactly the same, and once it's installed, it appears in the settings section of Home Assistant under devices and services. So here are all the different integrations that I've got for my smart home, and one of them is this myVaillant. So myVaillant, the people behind this integration, they have nothing to do with Vaillant themselves. It's just a bunch of people that are super keen to get the data out of the myVaillant app or the API into Home Assistant. So there's lots of documentation and every integration will be very similar. There'll be documentation pages and known issues and various things. But what's important is the devices and the entities. So for example, if I click into devices, these are the devices that are currently linked to my boiler. And there are four of them. And one of them, I won't know what order this is, but basically there's the boiler itself, and the boiler will be recording all sorts of information based on various sensors inside it. So it'll know the flow temperature, it'll know the target temperature, the minimum flow temperature. It'll know how to talk to the gateway, which is this little box that sits underneath the boiler, and that gateway talks to the smart thermostat. And the smart thermostat might have the heat curve in it. It'll have the plus and the minus to decrease or increase the temperature. It might have the water pressure. So there's various devices. There's the outside sensor that will be pulling in the humidity and the outdoor temperature. But you can see that all of these devices have fields or entities. And it's these entities that you can use in your dashboards. So for example, this is the home zone circuit 0. And here you can see it's got a climate entity, and it looks very similar to what you would see on a modern thermostat, say a Nest or a Hive or something like that. So if you had this on your dashboard, you'd be able to use this little slider to drag the temperature up or down. You could click on the plus or the minus. You could click on the mode. You could change it from auto to manual to off. You could change it from eco to normal. There's all sorts of things that you can do with these little dashboard cards. And as I say, all of these fields can be monitored and added to your personalized dashboard. So what I would suggest you do is have two tabs open. One, we're going to create a dashboard, and two will be the fields. And I can see the fields by going into if I just go back to this home screen here, I'm clicking on myVaillant integration, and instead of clicking into the devices, I click into the entities. And the entities are all the entities that are available that I can use on my dashboard. So all I did was I got familiar with a few of them. Things like the outdoor, the min flow, the indoor, the humidity, and the desired temperature, the current flow temperature. These were all key fields and entities that I want to see on my dashboard. So in order to create a dashboard, we need to go into settings, and under settings is dashboards, and it'll list all the current dashboards that you've got, but all you need to do is click on add dashboard and then new dashboard from scratch, and then you give it a title. So I'm just going to call this test. You can add an icon. There's loads of different icons that you can choose from. It doesn't really matter which one I use. I'm just going to say boiler, and we'll just check this one. And then it gives you a URL. I'm an admin on my Home Assistant, so I will switch that on. And show in sidebar just means, do you want to show it here in your sidebar? I like to have that on because it's just a quick way to get to the actual dashboard. And then I go and create it. So there is the test. And if I scroll up to the top, you can see under my heating, which is my default dashboard, there is the test. Now, if I click into it, it starts off blank, and this is where we start. So to edit your dashboard, you click on this pencil, and now it appears with a tab at the top, and then two little sections that you can now click on to add entities. So the very first one, these are little buttons. So let me just go back to my original dashboard, and I'll show you what I mean. So along the top of this dashboard, I've got these tiny little buttons. In fact, if I go onto this screen, you'll see I've got loads of them. I've got all the key information as little buttons. And those little buttons can be clicked on. So I can like click on the outdoor and I can see a chart, as well as going and showing some history. And each one of them are basically clickable. And then underneath the little buttons, I have some charts or some history diagrams. Like a history diagram is anything that has a timeline. So starting at 6 o'clock and ending at midday. And there might be a couple of days in between. So that's a history chart or graph. Likewise, this one is showing multiple different entities. So I've got 4 different entities in this one chart, and I'm doing that because I want to compare the data over a timeline, and it's useful to see what's going on. And you can have single charts. You can have charts that have, as I say, more than one entity. And if I go back one screen, you can also have gauges. And gauges are visually stimulating and pleasing, but also you can see if, say, like this water pressure, I can see if it's currently favorable, or maybe it's in the blue, or maybe it's in the red. So visually you can see if it's in trouble or not. Now with the app, if you're on here and you go to this little chart and then you click into here, well, I can just see water pressure 1.1, but I have no idea if I didn't know. I don't know if 1.1 is a good water pressure or not. So having this little chart or graph or gauge is great, because now you're more aware of where your water pressure should be. So going back to this dashboard, so when I create those little buttons, I have two choices. I have an entity and I have a custom mushroom template. I'm only going to be focusing on the entity. This is more technical because you need to know some code. So I'm going to select entity, and then it comes up with three options: entity, appearance, and interactions. And this is how you will interact with that button. So the entity that I want to start off with is indoor temperature. And I'm going to keep it very simple, and it's really just a repeat and rinse when you do these things. So I'm going to select the indoor temperature as the first entity that I want to see. And here on the right, you will see an example of whatever you're entering on the left. So as you can see, there's a little icon and the actual temperature. The icon is defined under appearance, and there it is over there. And you can choose any icon you like. The choices, there's thousands. So I'm leaving everything as default for the purposes of this video. I can change the color of that icon as well. Currently it's blue, but you can change it to anything you like. And you can also give it a name. Now currently it's called indoor temperature, but as you can see, it's not been shown on that icon. And that's because this name is unchecked. If I check it, the name will appear. If I want to overwrite the name indoor C, I can go into name here and I can type in indoor temp, and then it'll overwrite indoor C and put the temp in there. And then those checkboxes are just to switch on and off the different data that you see on the button. And then finally, under interaction, you have a choice of changing what happens when you tap on that icon. So at the moment, it's showing more information. And more information just means when I tap on it, it brings up a chart or a history graph. And I can go in and I can show more history. So that's what that means. But you have a choice to toggle, to navigate URL. Each one of these has a different meaning. You'd only ever use toggle if this was a light switch. But because this is just an indoor temperature, more information is sufficient. Or you can just select nothing and you won't be able to tap on it. So I'll just leave it as more information. So that's my first button. And now I'm just going to repeat the same process. I'm going to do it for outdoor. And I'm going to select the name, and I'm going to well, I'm going to leave it just like that. And this one, interaction, is also default more information. That's great. And one more, I'm going to put an entity, and in here I'm going to say, what can I put in here? Desired temperature. Now when the boiler is during the timer, the desired temperature is whatever you've set the timer to. So if it was between 6 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock in the morning, and I want the desired temperature to be 19 degrees, that's what you will see in that little button. Appearance, I'll just say desired temp. I want to show the name and save. So that's how you create those three buttons. And now if I go done, that's my live dashboard called test. So if I go to my phone now and I open up Home Assistant and I go to the menu and I select test, there is my live menu. So I can see those three key information points on the screen. So back on this menu, I'm going to edit it again. And now I'm going to add some sections. Now a section is just more information where you can put more cards, or you can build a thermostat. You can do all sorts of things, and I'll show you. So I click on the button here and it says, which card would you like to add? And there's a bunch of them. So for now, I want to add a gauge. So I'm going to click on gauge. And then what I want to show here is the water pressure. So I'm going to type in water pressure, and it's brought up that entity called home system water pressure. Now that is a bit of a long name and a mouthful, so I'm going to overwrite it with water pressure. There we go. The unit is bar. It's pulled that from the API automatically. The minimum that I'm going to use is 0.5. I mean, it could be 0.8, could be anything really. And this I'm going to make 2.5. And then I'm going to display it with a needle, because at the moment it's just showing you up to that mark there. That's the pressure. But a needle is actually a bit more visual. So there's the needle. And then I can define severity. And this is important because once you've read the manual or you've spoken to your installer, you will find out that in a combination boiler, the pressure should never drop below 1. If it's dropped below 1, that means it's low pressure in the boiler system, and you need to go and add water to the system to bring the pressure back up, because that pressure is what pushes the hot water from the boiler around the central heating pipes in your home. So you need to now define severities. So the green I'm going to set to 1, because that is the minimum that I want my boiler to be at. And the yellow I'll make 1.65, and the red I'm going to make 1.9. Now in my boiler, the pressure can't get too high. Even if I fill it up too much, there's a vent where it can release the pressure. So it's not going to cause any problems. But obviously if it hits that level, it'll start releasing water out of the system, and it goes into the overflow pipe. So for me, this is a good visual. And do I want to see any information or more information? I mean, more information is useful. Again, it shows me a chart of all the different pressures. I mean, that might be useful to someone. I don't know. For me, not so much. I'm only really interested in what the water pressure is doing on that screen. So I'm just going to say no. I don't care to press the button on that. So there is the water pressure. So I'll add one more um, gauge to this dashboard. So I click on gauge, and I'm going to do the flow control temperature, or the current flow. So that field, I'm going to leave it with that name. I'm happy with it, and it's in Celsius because it's pulled that value from the API. The minimum I'm going to make is 15, and the maximum I'm going to make is 70. Now my boiler flow control is never going to reach 70, because that's more like a standard system boiler. And again, I go into much detail about the flow control in a previous video, and the link is in the description. I'm going to use a needle again because that's useful, and I'm going to define a severity. So I've said 15 to 70. So green, I'm going to make that 20. It's very rare that it's going to drop below that. And the yellow will be 45, and the red I'm going to make 60. So you can see currently it's in the green. It's 26 degrees. It shouldn't drop below 23 because I have a minimum flow temperature set in the thermostat. But ideally, my current flow should be running between 26 and 45, round about there. And again, tap for more information. Well, actually, I do want to see the flow because I'm using this information a lot to determine if the flow is correct or not. So I'll leave that on, and I'm going to go save. So now I'm done. So there is the dashboard showing the different sections and buttons at the top of the screen. And as you can see on the browser, there's a lot of wasted space on either side. And likewise, if I go to my phone, you can see the icons are there, but imagine if I've got a whole bunch of gauges. They're going to be a lot of scrolling up and down, and that's not something that I really want to do. Now, if I show you my previous dashboard that I created, you'll notice that I've got these cards all running along the top, left to right. And if I go to the app for that particular dashboard, yeah, they are, you can see I've got more than one gauge or card appearing on the screen at any given time, which means I don't need to scroll that much because all the relevant information that I want to see is right there on the screen. So what you need to do when you build in your dashboard, you need to think about what you want and not just go and wildly add cards left, right, and center like I just did there, because that's not good practice. So what you should do is, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to replicate exactly what I did here, but on a different section. So I'm going to add a new section. Now, there's a card in here called horizontal stack. In fact, there's two. There's horizontal stack. If I type in stack, it says horizontal stack and vertical stack. The horizontal stack card allows you to stack together multiple cards so that they always sit next to each other in the space of one column. The vertical stack card allows you to group multiple cards so that they always sit in the same column. And really all this means is that you can put multiple cards next to each other. So the horizontal stack is the one that you want to be using. So when you load that up first time, you see that you're in the horizontal stack, and now it's giving you choices of what do you want to add onto your horizontal stack. And I want to add a gauge. So I'm going to click on the gauge, and then it looks slightly different to the previous setup, but it's pretty much the same. If you look at it carefully, there's entity, there's name, there's unit, there's min, there's max. It's the same thing. The only difference is this little section over here. You can see there's a 1 and there's a few fields that you can cut and move and do things. So basically what this is saying is I'm on a horizontal stack. I've added a gauge, and if I want to add another one, I would click on the plus sign, and then that'll add it next to this one. So for now, I'm just going to add the entity, which was the water pressure, home system water pressure. I'll rename it to water pressure because I want the short name. And the min I said was 0.5. The max was 2.2. I want the needle to appear and the severity. I want that to be 1. I want that to be 1.65, and this will be 1.9. And I don't want to tap on anything, so I'm just going to say nothing. Now, before I save this, I don't want to save it just yet because I want to add another gauge. So I'm now going to click plus, and then I'm going to go down and select that gauge again. And then I'm going to enter in the next entity, which was the flow temperature, current flow temperature. And you can see now there are two cards in this horizontal stack, and that's why you're seeing it appear like this. And I'm not going to change the name. I'm happy with that. The min I said was 15 and the max was 70. I want to see the gauge and I want to see the severity. This was 20, this was 45, and this was 60. And I said I do want to see the information. So now I'm going to click save. And now you can see you've got two next to each other instead of just one on top of each other. So I've been able to add two in the space of one of these things. And that's useful when you look at it on a mobile phone, because now if I go to test, this is a lot better. It's smaller, it's not so much waste of space, there's no big black gaps, and it's great. I can see everything on one side. So if you're ever in that situation where you've got them one after the other like this, then you need to go and add the horizontal stack. Now it's easy to remove these two because I just go and click the delete button up there, and now I've got these. Now you might already have a smart home and you've got various things. Let's say you've got Philips Hue lights and you've got blinds and you've got sensors to control motion and things like that. And I say new section, and then I select the horizontal, because if I don't do that, it's going to put those big icons underneath. And now I'm going to do lights, and I'm going to put in my office light, for example. And you can see my office light is currently on because it's shaded in orange. I'll just say office light. I can specify the height, and if there was a theme built into this, I could do that. Now, you can see the tap behavior is set to toggle, and that's because this is a light, so you can switch it on or off. And because it's a light and it has a toggle, you've also got extra features that are linked to holding the button down. So if I hold my finger down on the app, I can do some other tasks with this. So maybe I want to see more information, or do nothing, or go to somewhere through a URL. So I have choices. So I will just say, I won't click save. I nearly did, but I won't. I'm going to click the plus sign over here, and I'm going to go and add another light bulb. And this one is going to be called master. And that light is currently off. You can see because it's not shaded. It's a toggle, and I don't want to do anything when I hold the button. But you might want to set a strip light to come on, or close the blinds when you hold the button down. It just allows you to have multi features when you have that button on the screen. So now when I save, you can see I've got another horizontal stack with two lots of icons and buttons. And if I say done, there's my dashboard. And if I look at the app, I can refresh the screen now, and I can go to test. And now you've got buttons to switch on and switch off the lights. And as you do it on your phone, it replicates on the desktop. And if I do it on the desktop, it replicates on the mobile phone. But the key part of this is that all the information is on the screen in one place. And that's really how you build it. I'll do one more, and that is I'll add a state or status. I'm not going to use a horizontal stack for this because it's unnecessary, but there's a card here called history graph, and the history graph shows you a timeline. So I'm going to select the heating status because that's interesting. And the heating status shows you idle or heating up or whatever it might be. Now, the great thing about these type of cards is that you can do more than one at a time. Now, I won't for now. I'm just going to say save so that it'll adds it. But let's say I go and I want to see a chart now. So what I can do is I can do the same thing again, heating graph, and instead of showing me the sun, I'm going to say I want to see the current flow temperature. So I select that. I want to see the desired temperature. I'm going to select that as well. I want to see the indoor temperature, and I want to see the outdoor temperature. And a little thought needs to go into this as well, because when you add this information onto the screen, because these are all things to do with temperature, you need to think about the order of what you're seeing on the screen. Like, and let me just save this, and I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So if I go done, and you notice it's very small on the screen. So let me just go back into it, edit, and I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to go to layout. And in layout, I want to switch on full width card and then save. I think it's in the top of this section. I can say the width is currently 1, and if I drag it over to the end, it's now on 4. So if I say save, now on my desktop, you can see it's a lot wider. And that's great because now I can see a lot more information, and I can see a lot more timeline. So this is currently showing me from 2 o'clock to midnight to today, and it's now 1:30. So this is showing me a 24-hour time frame. Now, if I wanted to make that 48 hours or 60 hours, I would just go and edit it, edit this chart, and in here it says hours to show, and then I can specify 60 hours and then click save. And now suddenly I'm going to be seeing 3 days worth. So there's the 1 day, there's 12th, another day, and the 13th. So it's over 60 hours, and I can see all the information on the screen, all relevant information as well. Now, if I look at the app and I go and refresh the screen, test, look what you can see. You can see all the little buttons at the top which you can click on. You've got the gauges, you've got the toggles for the lights, you've got a status for the heating, and each one of these can be clicked on, or when you click on these, it shows you a little card of information. And the charts, well, when you hover your mouse over certain things, it'll often say if you want to zoom in, you can hold control down, and then you can use the plus and the minus to zoom in and out. So it's easier to do this on a desktop. So if I was on the desktop, I just hold the control and look, I can zoom in and out. It's fantastic. You can then really dig into the information. You can also switch off entities so that you see specific information, or in more detailed information. And yeah, it's just so powerful. And yet you've got all the relevant information on the screen in front of you. Now look at the difference that I can see in this versus if I go to this app. It's just night and day. You'll never want to use this app again if you were a Vaillant smart home owner, because this app is terrible. It's definitely better if you've got Home Assistant to go and create your own dashboard to show you the information. Anyway, I will leave the video there. It is a little long, I'm sorry. So that's Home Assistant, and that's how you create a dashboard. If you have any questions or need answers to things, please leave a comment in the section below. If you haven't subscribed, please do. It really does help me with the type of content that I'm going to be doing. And yeah, share my video if you know of somebody that has a similar setup to this. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.